2018 national budget loyal to core services. Former Planning Secretary says vetting measures important. And United Nations stands ready to help.
This is National EMTV News with Meriba Tulo.
A very good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is Tuesday's news. Our top story, of course, is the tabling of the 2018 national budget. We'll have for you our complete wrap-up around that later on in the bulletin. But first, the United Nations has expressed grave concerns about the human rights of asylum seekers and refugees still on Manus Island. Resident Coordinator Roy Trivedi told MTV News they stand ready to assist. However, he also appealed to the media to be responsible when reporting.
The chaotic situation on Manus Island has sparked concerns to the United Nations, reminding both governments of Australia and Papua New Guinea their duty of care.
So we are very concerned about the human rights of these people. We are concerned that things already, people who have been there for 4 years, living under quite difficult conditions, are going to continue to live in a difficult situation. They do not have, as I said, sufficient numbers of, in terms of health care. Many of these people are facing difficulties in terms of mental illness and so on. And it makes me actually very frustrated, to be honest, that we are seeing this situation which is really should have been prevented.
Assessments have been conducted on the new relocation site at East and West Lorengau, and the United Nations will closely monitor the situation. Trivedi also thanked the governments of New Zealand and United States for their offer.
We have also sent, together with the National Department of Health and my colleagues in the World Health Organization and in the Office for the Human Rights Commissioner, have all been, we have made ourselves available to provide support, to provide in any way, also assess the health situation and so on. So we, as the United Nations, are already trying to find ways of supporting.
Mr. Trivedi claims there was no excessive force used during the joint operation when relocating the asylum seekers and refugees to the new center, and he also reminded the media to be responsible when reporting.
And so on. But I'm glad that, at least excessive force appears not to have been used. Some of the newspapers saying, it's good that a humane way has been found to move people to the new center. I think some of the commentary from the newspapers and so on is not very well informed, because the fact is that there isn't enough space for even the people that are there. There isn't enough water, there isn't enough health services, there isn't enough counseling services and so on. And I think we are fooling ourselves if we think that we have a solution.
However, for a fair and accurate report on the Manus case, Trivedi says the media should be given access.
My plea to both governments is to allow journalists like yourselves to inspect, and also human rights organizations to inspect the new center, to say conclusively whether the facilities that are now being provided are sufficient or adequate for the situation we're in. And I think, as I said, we are concerned that this situation is still ongoing.
Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
One of Australia's prominent charities has challenged the Australian Immigration Minister to visit Manus Island, saying Peter Dutton's comments don't reflect the reality on the ground. World Vision Chief Advocate Tim Costello has returned from the island, where he was part of a fact-finding mission. He says asylum seekers simply don't feel safe here in Papua New Guinea.
We saw the forcible removal of people and thankfully no one died. There were bruises and scrapes but no broken bodies. We were there with Oxfam and other charities on a fact-finding mission, not as activists. I've never ever talked to an asylum seeker until that footage or ever retweeted. I'm not an activist, as Peter Dutton says. We're there to say we go to humanitarian disasters. What's going on here? Secondly, what we saw was this incredible sense of hopelessness. Hope nourishes the soul, and that's really what the naval base resistance was about. People saying, for the first time we've taken control, we're making a decision, we've only ever been controlled. Australians need to understand, as they say, oh, just move, don't resist, that this was about human hope. Thirdly, the health situation, and I can talk about that too. The realistic outcome just seems they're miles off. On the accommodation, East Lorengau, where some were, is fine. It's a 3-star motel. West House, which I went to, is still a building site under construction. I saw pictures from UNHCR who were in there of water still covering the only toilet block and squat toilets. Moss growing up, earth moving equipment, concrete mixers. You know, we wouldn't be allowed onto a building site here in Australia. It will be finished, and you are right, at that level, yes, there's acceptable accommodation. I said to them, particularly to one young man, you've got a wife and a child in Iraq, he's Kurdish, you can't go back, just accept PNG, they'll take you, why won't you stay? And he said, from the day I apply for citizenship, it's an 8-year wait still for my wife and child. If New Zealand takes us, it'll be, he said, 2-year wait. If other countries are much shorter wait. So it's all of these complicating factors for them. From the Chief Migration Officer down, so we met with him, our equivalent of the head of immigration, to the head of the police, who I met with the day they moved them forcibly out, all said this: why has Australia just left? This is Australia's responsibility. We agreed that if they wanted to stay in PNG, we would host them, they could live here. They don't want to stay. Now we're being told our problem, and Australia has left. With deep emotion, they feel we have just left.
Australian oil and gas company Santos Limited has allocated 3 million kina for the construction of a new accident and emergency unit for Tari Hospital. This will be implemented through a joint partnership program with Oil Search Limited. To signal the construction phase, a groundbreaking ceremony was held in Tari.
It's another milestone achievement for Hella's health sector. Yesterday, a delegation led by Oil Search CEO and Chairman of the Hella Provincial Health Authority, Peter Botten, flew into Tari to launch Hella's first ever accident and emergency ward. Hella Provincial Health Authority Dr. James Kintwa described the occasion as a significant event and said the Accident and Emergency Ward, or A&E, is an integral part of the development of Tari Hospital.
The work that is being funded by Santos and by Oil Search Foundation, let me also say publicly here, personally from our chairman, Mr. Botten, his work that the staff and the people of Hella sincerely appreciate.
Since taking over the hospital 18 months ago, Oil Search Limited, through its Oil Search Foundation branch, has been working overtime to bring the hospital to its current standards. It started with only 1 doctor, and today it has 11.
And having a new A&E followed by an outpatients department is a critical part of our 5-year plan to develop the PHA and develop this hospital in Tari.
And one of Santos's core values is to build a better future. Therefore, we are also committed to creating healthy, thriving communities in the regions where we operate, which is why we are really proud to be supporting the Hella Provincial Hospital Emergency Ward here today.
Since January, over 65,000 patients have come through Tari Hospital. 3,000 were emergency cases. Without having proper facilities, patients were referred to Mendi or even Mount Hagen. And Tari Pori MP and Finance Minister James Marape said the investments of the oil and gas companies in the hospital will go a long way. Similar views were shared by Hella Governor Philip Undialu.
Let me say that this sort of embrace of help to our people will continue to build rapport amongst our society and ensure that our society progresses from where we are to the next level. So thank you, Santos. Many investors suddenly invest, suddenly make money and run away, but for Santos to come and say, thank you, Papua New Guinea, we are partner in resource development as well as future of this province. I think we salute you once again.
Meanwhile, Health Minister Sir Pukatemu says it is important for provinces to have health authorities. And on behalf of the government, he commended the support of the private sector in working in partnership with the government to see these health authorities established, especially for Hela province.
As Health Minister, I have made a commitment to make sure that the provincial health authorities work. And the way to work is for all of us to put our hands into it.
Stanley Over Jr., National EMTV News.
Still in Tari, patients at the children and maternity wards of Tari Hospital received early Christmas gifts. They were surprised by staff of the Oil Search Foundation, led by Peter Botten and Stephanie Corpus Campbell.
Patients at the Tari Hospital were given special treats apart from their usual medical treatments yesterday. Gifts wrapped and packed in bags were given to children in the children's ward and later to mothers at the maternity ward. Part of Oil Search Foundation's commitment in developing the hospital, Chairman Peter Botten says next year will be a busy year for them.
2018 will be a very, very busy year. We now have 11 doctors working in the hospital. We had one when we started. We're fixing the power and the water which runs the hospital properly. We've built a fence around the hospital grounds. We're moving forward with nursing infrastructure, nursing accommodation, a new kitchen. We've done a number of changes to the wards. We've done IT systems are coming into the hospital. We're doing a range of new works with an X-ray machine. I understand the new X-ray machine is now here and we'll progressively install it over the next few months. We'll also be working on a new lab and blood bank for the hospital.
But for now, the foundation's commitments remain with the hospital patients, and giving gifts can contribute one way or the other to them regaining their health. Stanley Over Jr., National EMTV News.
To Madang Province Health Service providers in Madang are proud recipients of new medical equipment thanks to Phoenix Pharmacy of Australia. This was made possible through a partnership with the Melanesian Foundation and Melanesian Tourist Services, donating medical equipment in the country for over 20 years. 2 tons of medical supplies were recently donated, which included wheelchairs, hospital beds and surgical equipment. Melanesian Foundation Managing Director Sir Peter Bata says they aim to improve medical services in PNG, particularly in rural areas. To Kimbe, West New Britain Province and the National AIDS Council Secretariat will be staging a march this Friday to commemorate World AIDS Day. This will involve all teams for the 7th PNG Games and is expected to be a big event. Coordinator Tony Lipua says they are targeting large groups of people like the contingents in sports, hoping the message will reach a larger audience.
As well. So we have a lot of very important speakers who will be participating in this event during the World AIDS Day. We are trying to engage the teams who are participating here to take part in the march, which will start from both sides. I think one from that side and from this side. And so we will be marching from there into the stadium, and then we will have our guest speakers give their speeches after that.
An external audit into the University of Technology's accounts has revealed proper revenue and expenditure. This was announced by Vice-Chancellor Dr. Albert Scram, who says this is a milestone for Unitech because for the first time in 20 years, the institution has received clean reports of their accounts.
According to the Auditor General's report, Unitech's accounts are in order. The audit into the institution's 2015 account shows that their expenditure and revenue are accounted for. Vice-Chancellor Dr. Albert Scram says this is the first time in 2 decades that the school has received a clean report on their accounts.
So it is a continuous effort on the side of the management to assure that our spending generates some benefits to the university.
Despite not receiving a 14 million kina grant from the national government, the institution has managed to balance their accounts this year at the cost of cutting their budget.
Council instructed us to live within our means and not spend more than we receive.
Meanwhile, the government handed down today the 2018 national budget, allocating 5 million kina to Unitex infrastructure and another 5 million kina to rebuilding the mess, which was burnt down last year during the student unrest. Lucy Kopana, National MTV News, Leh.
You're watching National MTV News. We go for a break now. When we come back, stories from the 2018 national budget. Stay tuned. Welcome back to National MTV News. The O'Neill-Able government today presented the 2018 national budget, the first since taking office after the national elections this year. Framed against a backdrop of declining economic growth and within a very tight fiscal environment, a deficit budget was handed down today as expected. Deputy Prime Minister and Treasurer Charles Abel today presented the 2018 national budget. This money plan, the first for the O'Neill-Able government in this term of parliament, against a backdrop of challenging economic climates, Treasurer Abel handed down a deficit budget. Under the 2018 national budget, total income including grants is set at 12.7 billion kina, whilst total expenditure including capital expenditure is set at 14.7 billion kina, a deficit of 1.9 billion kina, which according to Abel is still within the legal limits.
Our major commitments around TFF and subnational funding, we're making sure that all our commitments are met in terms of our payroll and operation costs of government. And what we're trying to say here today is the emphasis we're trying to bring through to revenue and growing the economy, the cost control, tidying up some of the arrears that we have.
It's lower than the projected growth of 2.7 in the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, and the 2.8% that was projected at the time of the 2017 budget.
The 2018 national budget has remained largely committed to the government's priority areas. They are economic growth, infrastructure, law and order, free and quality education, and free and quality health.
Economic sector, we are stimulating economic growth through direct sector intervention. We have some big programs that will come on board next year. We have programs such as state equity for agriculture and others.
Whilst revenue still remain hard to come by, the government has gone ahead with its intention to increase its commitment to capital expenditure, with budget capex set to realise a 15% increase in funding in 2018. According to National Planning Minister Richard Maru, this intervention by government is aimed at stimulating the economy in areas away from the traditional reliance on the extractive industry and is aimed at diversifying the economy base of the country.
And our priority is shifting to economic growth, growing the revenue streams and building a sustainable economy, and not one that's so dependent on the resource sector, as we've had over the last 40 years.
Among the big winners in the capital expenditure budget is the agriculture sector, which will see the government establishing a state equity fund for agriculture, which has been allocated 100 million kina.
It is quite simple. We are going to invite the private sector to partner our government to fund a number of major agriculture projects.
I'm very happy with the budget outcomes today. After the announcement regarding the Alatawa Code number 2, obviously we were under a bit of pressure in terms of how we're going to resource this and fund it.
But as always, challenges remain, especially in regards to how these plans are implemented, and according to the Institute of National Affairs, the performance of the public service will need to improve in a big way if the government's plans have any chance of being realised.
There, because the government's saying, hey, look, we want to set the right conditions, but at the same time, clearly, within government, they're also trying to pick some winners and select certain not just set the conditions for agriculture, but actually pick some winners in there by imposing some tariffs on imports.
Despite the challenging economic climate, the government has demonstrated a commitment to capital expenditure through the 2018 budget. National Planning Minister Richard Maru, when addressing the 2018 National Budget Press Lockup, announced a significant increase with capital expenditure now set at 4.6 billion kina, a 15% increase from the 2017 budgetary allocation. This component is spread out across various programs, which include PSIP and DSIP, as well as the newly introduced Ward Support Improvement Program. Total fixed commitments are set at 1.6 billion kina, with the balance to come from loans and grants from Papua New Guinea's development partners. The United Nations says the 2018 national budget is crucial for Papua New Guinea as an implementer of the Sustainable Development Goals. UN Resident Coordinator Roy Trivedi says by the year 2030, these goals have to be achieved.
This parliament has an important role to play in ensuring a fair distribution of wealth.
Because this, in the next 5 years, is likely to show whether Papua New Guinea is making the progress that's required for us to reach the 2030 agenda and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, or whether we will find ourselves struggling. If we don't achieve enough progress in the next 5 years, it will become very, very difficult for us to achieve the 2030 agenda, and beyond that, of course, the Vision 2050 document. So this Parliament has a very important role.
With a budget day spending and then development, however, he says that resources need to back up the many government policies.
Ministry of Finance and so on, is that already in this year, 2017, the growth forecast for the country has had to massively been reduced from, at the beginning of the year last year, we were talking about 9% plus growth. We've had to reduce to 6% in the middle of the year, and now we're talking about 2.2% growth at the end of the year. And when you think that our population growth rate is 3.2%, you can see already the difficulties. So making a really good budget which has a solid basis, which is predictable and targets money to where it is most needed in the country is going to be vital.
Funding promised need to be delivered for planning purposes, and if it's appropriated on the floor of Parliament, it must be rolled out.
Even if it's little funding, if governments know that it's predictable and it's coming, then it makes a big difference, because at least people can plan proper services. They can tell their electorates, look, we have this amount of money, we're targeting it in this way, this and this way, and this is what we're looking to achieve. So this budget is a very, very important budget for the country.
The UN Resident Coordinator has confidence on the national government on the provision of goods and service delivery.
But we also know that resources in the next few years are going to be very tight. And we are going to have to work extremely hard to make sure additional resources are provided in country, whether that is through private sector, whether it's through new loans and renegotiated loans and so on. But without that, it will be very hard.
Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
For Papua New Guinea to reap full benefits from the extractive industry, reforms in taxation regimes need to be revisited. This formed part of a discussion at a recent stakeholder forum organized by the National Research Institute in Port Moresby. The forum focused on the various incentives on offer within the extractive industry, whilst also discussing the effects these incentives had on the overall development of the country. On the eve of the handing down of the 2018 national budget, the National Research Institute has released a draft report on leaner tax incentives for PNG's extractive resource sector. This report, produced in conjunction with Monash University, reviews tax incentives for the extractive resource sector to ascertain whether they are economically beneficial for Papua New Guinea's economy. According to NRI Senior Research Fellow Dr. Francis Oduno, with the extractive sector contributing a large portion of the country's total revenue, there are still opportunities for revenue to be increased through taxation measures. It begins with adequately resourcing the body responsible for tax collection, the Internal Revenue Commission.
The starting point is give IRC enough resources to collect revenue, because sometimes they don't have enough manpower to cover all the districts and the provinces. That's why some arguments here, I heard that some provinces, some companies don't pay taxes. It's mainly because probably the presence of IRC in the grassroots area is so small. So if IRC is properly resourced, such that they can spread their wings all over, you see, so they have officers on the ground, maybe at the district level, to be able to monitor tax collections and resources.
Among the tax incentives discussed, the infrastructure tax credit scheme, which has been one that has been in the spotlight recently, particularly with several instances where project developers have undertaken projects in areas away from their operation areas.
Because it seems to favor only certain areas where the resources companies are based. So what happens to the rest of the country that are far away from the resource project areas? Which means the infrastructure doesn't spread far and wide to other places. If government was doing it, government would decide where to allocate the funds and where to build the resources. But because the role has been given to the companies, they only build within a certain radius, which doesn't serve the entire country. So that's where some advocate that they should be removed, government to collect tax as usual, and then allocate that money either to provincial governments to do the infrastructure within their areas.
Whilst there are arguments calling for the infrastructure tax credit scheme to be strengthened, Dr. Oduno argues that there is no direct correlation between tax incentives and direct foreign investment. Therefore, the argument for removing tax incentives for the extractive industry is one that has to be taken seriously.
So we need to start making corrections and doing what is right so that we get enough resources, use those resources to build infrastructure, and once there's infrastructure, that should be able to attract the companies to come and operate. Those who are already there, they'll use those resources. Yes.
The Integrated Community Development Policy for the Community Development Department is currently under review. The review addresses challenges of government services into the rural areas. Departmental Head Anna Solomon says the policy is the umbrella policy for the department.
The review ensures government services reach district level and are fully implemented within provinces and districts. The objective of the review is to establish better awareness of community development policy implementation, promote partnership with the government, and create networks between the Community Development Department and state agencies. This is also part of stakeholders' consultation, attended by stakeholders, the National Planning Department, Implementation and Rural Development Department, and Physical Planning, among others. A consultation with churches and NGOs will be held later this week following the review. Merlin Diaukatam, National EMTV News.
Back to the 2018 national budget, and the national government's free health and education policies will continue as outlined in the second Alotau Accord. Education has been allocated 1.2 billion kina, a 13.3% increase from 2017. The health sector is expected to receive 1.5 billion kina.
Free health and education totaled to 19% of the 2018 budget. In previous years, issues were raised on late payments of tuition fee-free funding, university funding cuts, aid post closing, and lack of pharmaceutical drugs and others. The 2018 budget has maintained tuition fee-free funding at 602 million kina. The Western Pacific University has received the biggest share of university funding of 40 million kina.
We're sticking to our major commitments around TFF and subnational funding. We're making sure that all our commitments are met.
A total of 266.1 million has been allocated for medical supplies, procurements and distribution process. The issue of rundown aid posts was brought up as they had an allocation of only 7 million kina. Meanwhile, National Planning Minister Richard Maru said the government allocated more funding to improve district hospitals and health services at a district level.
2 million kina every year in the 10 million allocation just for health. and the districts are responsible to maintain all the aid posts in the districts by the ambulances, while the national government obviously pays for the wages and salaries. So that's a functional responsibility of the DDAs in the districts. And they are provided with 2 million kina every year to fund that. So there's really no reason for that. Our focus now is on building the district hospitals that we need to build. Most of our districts don't have district hospitals. And many of our people have to come all the way to urban centers in towns just for medication that's not required for them to come all the way to town.
Meanwhile, Institute of National Affairs Director Paul Barker says there needs to be a standard in place to ensure quality-free health and education services delivered by the government.
We need to have an effective quality and standards control mechanism, and as with schooling, you need the school inspectors, not just to be able to be in provincial centres. They have almost no money to actually go out and inspect schools, so that makes them pretty pointless. So crucial to have that an effective inspectorate, and as in health as well.
Adelaide Sirks Kari, National EMTV News.
We take a look now at the finance news, and the kina closed unchanged at $0.3115 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your kina was buying $0.304 $0.396 Australian dollars, $0.2518 euro, and 33.41 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, coffee closed higher, gold is trading lower, cocoa and copper closed the day lower. Crude oil trading lower, palm oil and copper closed the day lower. And on the stock markets, the Dow Jones closed 22 points higher, the ASX is down 4 points, and the All Ordinaries 3 points lower. Here with National EMTV News, we'll have more after these messages. Stay tuned. Welcome back to National EMTV News. Telecom PNG has been rolling out its 4G network in all major centres of the country. The latest launching was in Wewak yesterday. National Retail Manager Amos Tepi says they are now looking at extending the new service into other centres, and the company is overwhelmed with the support from customers.
Telecom PNG network is entirely a digital system with an optimal fibre transmission system. National Retail Manager Amos Tepi says last Saturday the company launched its new service in Wewak. ECP Governor Alan Bird and Marprik MP John Simon were there to officiate the new service into East Sepik Province.
Mipla liking one pla good pla reliable service where time you charging Mipla M by fare na now that's all you come launch him product blow you na you me help him you na you give him Mipla sampla free something na Mipla hamamas na. Two plamun behind you happy price. Don't do that.
We had a good turnout, and the reception was good. The crowd was there. Everyone welcomed 4G Telecom new service into Wewak Sepik. So
Telecom has also rolled out the 4G network in Kimbe 3 weeks prior to the PNG Games. The company is also looking at rolling out its service into Marprik and Medang in the coming weeks.
We're looking forward to see rollout into Marprik as well. More importantly, that's a commercial hub as well, according to the governor and member for Marprik, John Simon. So we want to do that before end of the year as well too. In terms of Medang, we are looking forward to do another one, but the time yet to set. And at this stage, 4G is running. It's on coverage everywhere, so I think customers in Medang should benefit at this time, and we want to see the launch to be bigger for all our corporate customers to come on in terms of COG, looking at how they should benefit the 4G, the speed download, upload, then we want to make sure all the customers benefit the 4G service that we provide in Medang.
Meanwhile, the National Retail Manager wants to advise Telecom customers of their 1,000 kina cash giveaway promotion to do a top-up of 20 kina or more to be in the draw to win.
On your mobile recharges, then you get a winning customers. And we believe one of them was here in Medang, also won 1,000 kina. And I encourage all the Medang residents, all the customers here, to continue to do the top up over 20 kina, and they could be another winner again. And not only in Madang but other provinces as well, they are winning 1,000 kina. It's going to go on for up till next year, 2018 February, and we want to give this back to our customers.
Masa Louis, National EMTV News, Madang.
People living along the Utupia Road at Poroma in Hela Province have lifted a week-long roadblock demanding compensation payment from Angore Landowners Association following a road accident in 2015 where a grade 12 student was killed. The vehicle's driver was alleged to have been under the influence of alcohol at the time of the incident.
Last Friday, Hela PPC Michael Welly and the New Southern Highlands PPC Joseph Tondop held peace talks with relatives of the grade 12 student late Nason Philip to restore normalcy along the Poroma-Magarima Road in Hela Province. So far, the Utupia villagers have impounded 3 vehicles belonging to Hela Provincial Government and 10 container trucks belonging to Trans Wonderland Limited, a trucking company owned by Angore Landowners Association. The relatives of the deceased boy have agreed to open the roadblock, but they will not release the vehicles until their demands are met.
You know, over the hell you walk in trouble. Because Allah who said is supposed to pay this like compensation. All the street in this like every area. So now you block the road. Understanding him stop now, I think I'm going to paper finish now you plus.
The Utupia villagers had demanded over 3 million kina as a compensation payment to be paid by the Angore Landowners Association for the death which occurred 2 years ago. They have demanded 150 pigs for compensation and another 105 pigs, 12 goats and 84,000 kina as belcol, a sort of payment to keep peace between the warring groups before the compensation payment. The Utupia villagers expressed their frustrations that since the death of Nason Philip, none of the representatives from the Angore landowner group have attended the meetings to listen to their demands. PPC's Tondop and Welly assured the grieving relatives that both will fast-track meeting with Angore landowners to discuss the long-standing compensation demands.
Landowners Association now. Na Hela provincial government now, all people blow Hela. And one blow road and belong. Siki matense and blow you me blocking road. You blah did fulfill this law. Purpose blow you blah police. Now me come now. Provincial police commander blow LIM companies. Now we come.
The Utupia people have cleared the roadblocks and promised not to harass vehicles and passengers traveling along the highway. Vasinata Yama, National EMTV News, Mount Hagen.
Here with National EMTV News, Trukai Sports is up next. We'll have the details after these messages. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. We begin with Rugby League, and a 44-member train-on squad has been named for next year's PNG Hunters team. They include players who have been part of the Hunters in previous years.
2016 co-captain Adam Kurave is back on the train-on squad. He joins 19 current premiership-winning SPPNG Hunters players. 24 new players have been included. 4 Lace Next Tigers players, Junior Rob, Mark Peaty, Tigers and PM's 13 captain Charlie Simon and John Andy. Egmar Guria's captain Stanley Olo, Ila Alu and Dilbert Isaac also acquired a spot. 9 players from other Intercity Cup teams have been selected. Israel Wari from Central and Joseph Singura of Medang make the squad after both were spotted at the PNG Games Rugby Nines competition currently held in West New Britain Province.
We had one of our guys in Kimbe that went and watched all the games down there, Joe Bruno and with Alois Tabade and all those guys there, so dependent on the West New Britain Rugby League people as well. So, hopefully they come in and, impress us and, be in the final squad.
Coach Michael Maum says the grueling pre-season training program will begin on December 4th in Port Moresby.
Open training camp where it's going to fall on one day only, where in the morning we'll probably be inviting all the halfbacks, hookers, 5'8", 2-hour block for them. Just they can come in, register themselves, but we'll put a bit more detail out on that next month. And also that's where we just, there could be other good players out there that never been.
PNG RFL CEO Reata Rao thanked all sponsors for their continuous support throughout 2017.
And our other support sponsors that support Hunters the last 4 years, we are now currently engaging with our marketing department to source a few other sponsors. And there'll be most likely 1 or 2 new sponsors that are coming into the Hunters fall in 2018 season. So at this stage, all the sponsors that we have, SP Brewery started with SP Brewery, and all the other supporting sponsors.
The final 30-member team will be announced next year. Elijah Levet, National EMTV Sports.
And very quickly to the Rugby League World Cup. World Cup referee boss Tony Archer has defended the decision to deny Andrew Fifita's 80th minute try in the semi-final match against England on Saturday. The incident had sparked social media outrage, especially amongst Tongan supporters in Tonga as well as across the globe. Here with Trukai Sports, we go for a quick break and we'll be back with more after these messages.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. A professional boxing referee from Australia was in the country recently for the Pro Boxing Championship and shared some boxing rules with boxers. He says professional boxers need to be familiarized with the current international rules.
With vast of experience in professional boxing, international professional boxing referee, who's no stranger in PNG, Brett Vocali took time in his recent visit to PNG after 4 years to help promote and revive professional boxing in the country. Showing his passion and love for boxing, Vocali educated national professional boxers to fully grasp and understand the true nature of boxing.
So when we do the hand, you put the tape over here, but the tape must finish here. You cannot put tape over the knuckle. Do you understand that? All right? No tape over the knuckle. Put gauze, all the gauze here, no problem. Protect the hand. This is your tool of trade. We must protect that. So put the gauze down there, no problem. When you put the tape here, put the tape there, but the tape must finish before the end of the knuckle. Do you understand that, boys? Okay. In between the finger, you use the separator, no problem. Use separator because they keep the bandage in place.
He says it is important that safety rules are applied.
For the boxers, we'll be using 8 and 10 ounce boxing glove. For the fight number 1 is super middleweight fight, 76.2 kilos, is going to be 10 ounce boxing glove. Fight number 2 is a super flyweight, is 52 kilos, it's going to be 8 ounce glove. The lightweight fight, 61.23 kilos, is going to be 8 ounce glove. And the super welterweight 69.85 kilo is going to be 10 ounce glove. But remember, you must, if the agreed weight, I hope you will make it very close to the weight, all right?
Vocali also reminded boxers bandaging is very, very important.
A fighter who has been hit by a legal blow with the knuckle part of the glove to the scoring part of the body, and if a third part of his body touched the floor, is classed as a knockdown. Okay, one glove, down there, like that, it's a knockdown. The referee must count. Do you understand that? If you get knocked down, it's 1 point deduction from your scorecard. We talked to the judges this morning. The judges understand, and they will make that. So if you get knocked down and the referee, he counts, it's 1 point deduction off your scorecard.
Training programs will be organized in the future where boxers will travel to Australia for training camps. He promised the professional boxing fraternity that next year will be full of surprises and boxers should be ready to face the challenges coming their way. Godwin Eki, National EMTV Sports.
And that's it for Trukai Sports. When we come back, the weather details for Wednesday. Stay tuned.
Trukai Sports. True Kai Sports.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. Worth doing with Dulux.
Look at the weather forecast for the next 24 hours in the southern region. Fine, becoming cloudy for Alota. The rest of the region to expect some showers. To the Momasi region, rain and cloudy periods in Leh as well as in Wau. In Medang as well, showers and thunderstorms for Wewak and Banimore. To the New Guinea Islands region, a few showers expected in Lorengau and Kavieng, as well as in Kimbe, cloudy periods in Buka, cloudy periods as well in Kokopo and Rabaul. And in the Highlands region, Mount Hagen, Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wapeg, all these major centers can expect evening showers with morning fog.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. Worth doing with Dulux.
And that's the news, sport and weather for today, Tuesday, the 28th of November, 2017. On behalf of the EMTV News team, pleasant viewing. Good night.